Hello, everyone, and welcome to this seminar, The Power of Positive Parenting. I'm so glad that you're here with me today, and I'm really looking forward to discussing different parenting tools and tips with you, especially now that life looks so different than it did even 3 months ago. So today we're going to discuss how to do this whole parenting in quarantine thing. There is a little spoiler alert. There's no one size fits all. Every family looks so different. But hopefully today you'll hear some tips or tools that works for you and that you can apply in your own family life and help, as I come alongside you during this whole journey of parenting. So to begin, my name is Hannah Gabizon and I am the founder and director of Loving Our Littles. And this is an organization that's focused on educating parents in childhood development. I am convinced that when we have a better understanding of our child's developmental stage, then we can be more effective in our communication with them. And so my goal is to provide the information and tools that can help parents better connect with their children. And I want to begin by saying that if you have felt at all overwhelmed in this, 2 or 3 months as a parent in quarantine, you are not alone. We are all feeling it. I am in my own house. I'm a mother to 3 boys, and their ages are 2, 4, and 6. And I also run 2 businesses. So can you say busy much? But quarantine really has changed the way that our lives look on a major scale. My kids are not attending school or daycare anymore. They're missing their friends, their hockey, their activities, and really my heart breaks for them. And it seems like each day has its own unique challenge. And just earlier, in May, when I thought the weather was finally warming up, it was snowing. So I'm not really sure what's happening with the year 2020. However, I hope that through these points and stories that I share today, you'll feel like you are not alone, and that this quarantine period is really hard for everyone in different ways, for both parents and kids alike. But you know what? We really can make it through together. So in our short time together, I want to discuss 3 different points that will be helpful in parenting during quarantine. And of course, this is really going to look different for everyone, but and maybe we won't always use the right tools at the right time, but that's okay. Today, our goal is to really make sure that we have the tools when we need them. So first today, we're going to zoom out and kind of talk about some broad techniques for day-to-day living in quarantine. So here we're going to look at the importance of routine as well as how to encourage our kids in the midst of stress. And I know for me, even before quarantine started, when I would have, a few days that are just different than normal schedule than I was used to, like if I would sleep in or if my husband was gone on a trip or something, my day just seemed very unstructured. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. But over time, you can start to feel it, if it drags out. So if you're wrestling with this, we're not alone, the lack of structure and routine in our day. So we're going to talk about that. Our second point today is that we're going to look at what's happening in the minds of our children. Maybe you think it's just chaos that's happening in there. But when we can understand how our kids' brains work, as well as how this quarantine is affecting them, that can help us have a better understanding why they react the way that they do. Our children's lives have also changed drastically, and they used to be involved with play dates and school and friends, and they just don't have that face-to-face time right now. And all of these factors are influencing how they are, feeling and how we can understand them. So, for example, if my son is crying about something, I can understand him from a different perspective. If I know how much he slept. If he slept really badly, he was up all night, that's a little bit different than if he had a really great night's sleep. So I can understand, him better when I understand how much sleep he's had. Knowing where our kids are is the first step in this process, and it's also a very important one. Lastly, we're going to list out some tools in our pocket, and these are really helpful methods to speak with our children. And I love the term tool in our pocket because it shows that it's available and it's there if you want it. So with all of that said, the main goals of this discussion today are to provide easy tools for parents, during quarantine. Remember, you all are essential workers. Maybe you're discouraged, or maybe you feel like you're failing, but I hope that listening to me today, you can be reminded that even though we're not in the same boat, every family and home looks different right now, we are all in the same storm and we can all be on the same team. Okay, so with that, let's jump in. Does this picture accurately describe or look like what your house looks like right now? Or maybe you're kind of more on top of your kitchen, but this is just kind of how you're feeling inside. Maybe life feels a bit like a tornado met a hurricane and it just tore through your home. And some days all you can do is just check the clock to see, is it bedtime yet? And then maybe you realize it's only 9 a.m. But maybe parenting in quarantine has you crossing your fingers and just hoping to survive. So what can we do to make our days easier? Is there any solution? Well, the first important thing that can help us on a day-to-day basis is to have a routine. Think about it. We know from our daily lives that children thrive on routine. They wake up, they get dressed, they have breakfast, and then they're out the door. And once they're at school, they have, a certain amount of activities, crafts, reading, writing, math. The day follows a progression. And why is routine so important for children? Well, routine can help children feel safe and secure in their environment. They know what's expected of them, and it makes their environment more predictable. They can become more independent, and they can then learn important life skills by having tasks in their day that help them take care of themselves, such as washing their hands before eating or brushing their teeth. Children often they fear the unknown, having a new food that they need to try, or moving to a new house, or even when will life resume after quarantine. Change really can be a teaching opportunity, but it also can be stressful. So routine can bring a consistency to a child's life. Having a routine gives you the opportunity to teach your child what is important to your family. So, for example, when you make exercise part of your day or eating healthy foods for meals, that shows your child that you care about taking care of your health as well as their own. Another benefit to having a routine can help your child regulate their body, and it affects many day-to-day activities, such as sleeping well at night. They develop better eating habits, and they can even be consistent in having bowel movements, and we all know how important that is with children. So what are some guidelines that can help you establish a routine? So the first thing about making a routine is being realistic about what you must get done and to skip what you do not need to do. So you can see this little picture of these two women speaking, and one of them says, "I hear you, raising kids and running a house keeps me busy. And I also have this little gig on the side called a full-time job." It's crazy having kids home all the time and trying to balance work and everything. So you need to think and consider, how does my day need to be organized for me to get the essential things done? So for my business as a child behavior advisor, when I meet with clients, I need to prepare for our meetings, I need to be on the call at the right time, and I also send recaps to the families that I've spoke about. So on those really busy days, I don't need to organize all my closets or figure out which Tupperware containers are missing their lids. Of course, if you have time to do these things, that is awesome. And can you come to my house next? Just kidding. But don't think to yourself, you know what, I'm home a lot and I really should be able to get all these things done. So my first piece of advice is to build that healthy routine. You need to focus on the musts, and then if there's time, the wants. For families and parents that are trying to juggle working together as well as, having the kids at home and finding that time, my next point for making a good routine that could work for you is pairing things that work together. So try to put activities that can happen side by side. For example, my children, they love to color, thank goodness. And so usually I'll pair coloring time with my working time. And this allows me to kind of keep an eye on them while I'm getting some other work and projects done. So when you pair activities together, this time may look like you're sitting with your child and each of you kind of are doing an activity. And this is kind of like you're working while they are involved in an activity that they mostly can manage on their own. And of course, depending on the age of your children, This may require, sometimes they may require some more attention, having maybe help with homework, which kind of can limit your flexibility. So in that case, I do try to incorporate something that doesn't really need my undivided attention, like if I was cooking or doing some laundry. The third point for making a routine would be to try to include outside time and downtime every day for everyone if it's possible. You can keep it simple and doable. Outside time can simply be for a 15-minute walk or going into the backyard. And even if it's a short duration, the movement, the exercise, and fresh air and the sunlight, it's extremely important for their mental health and for yours. Having downtime every day is also so important. Having that quiet time or even nap time for little kids really benefits our children by giving them the opportunity to have mindfulness or to be alone with their own thoughts and feelings. And that builds their independence. They can see that they can do things on their own and rest their bodies. And it also helps them to avoid periods of being overwhelmed or overstimulated. And sometimes it may come as a surprise that doing nothing all day may feel exhausting. We really need to take time to rest. And even as adults, having rest time can be very helpful. So when your kids are resting, that maybe gives you a chance to as well. And maybe that means laying down or finally working in quiet. Either way, there's kind of a win-win all around. And in my own home, when my kids have outside time and downtime, there's a noticeable difference in the family dynamics from having crazy monkeys to relatively happy children. And these two aspects really help everyone feel healthier and refreshed. So keep in mind that having activities without a schedule is also fine if that's working for you. You really do need to figure out what is the best for your family. However, if you are going to implement one, I'm going to share kind of a sample schedule with you. And hopefully that gives you some ideas for breaking up a day at home. And you can take the ideas that work for you, leave the ones that don't, and create a schedule that's best for your family with these tips in mind. And I will say that before creating a schedule, what's really important is to have kind of a family sit down, a family meeting, and involve your children in it, in the planning of the routine. Talk to your children about what are important things to have in your day and what extra things they might want to include, and come up with this routine together. For little kids, you can get them involved by having them cut out pictures of maybe a magazine or something, or draw or color pictures on the routine, so that even for the kids who are not reading, they can still follow along and they know what activities are next, things to expect in their day. So let's say this sample schedule, we're going to talk about a family that is maybe parents are trying to juggle work while having a toddler or a preschooler at home. So in the morning, between 7 and 8, this is a great wake-up time. And the thing that has really worked for our family is having this okay to wake grow clock. And it's changed the entire tone and dynamics for our morning. So right now, as we're kind of entering into summer, the sun, it rises earlier. And so waking with the sun, it just doesn't work for me. So what works for us is that I set the clock at 7:20, which tells the kids that they can come out of their rooms for breakfast at that time. And oftentimes they wake up before then, but since my 3 kids share a room, they do need to be quiet until the light shines, just for any late sleepers who may be sleeping in. Of course, they know that they're able to come out, to go to the bathroom, and then they go back into their beds, and they have some books or toys that they can play with and keep themselves busy and quiet while everybody sleeps. We talk about how important sleep is for each person's brain, that it's like food for our brain, and that it really that we need to respect each other's sleep time. And so there's a couple of reasons that I have this clock. First, it's so important that they don't wake me up. I will admit that sometimes I still have my youngest coming into my room around 6:30, looking for where his toy is. But one reason is to make sure that we as parents have time in the morning to organize our own days. That's why we kind of have a later wake up time. The second point is, since my 3 boys do sleep in the same room, it keeps each person from waking each other up. They do know that if the light is not on, it's not officially morning time yet, and so they do keep themselves busy with their own activities in their bed. And lastly, it does give our kids a sense of time and control. They wake up and they see that the clock says 7 and they know, okay, I have 20 more minutes until the light is going to turn on. After that, we have breakfast and get dressed, which, maybe means changing out of pajamas into more comfortable clothing like sweatpants, because let's be real, no one is wearing jeans these days. After breakfast, the goal should be to, get moving, get kids active. Having an exercise time can be really great. Sometimes we have put on a video on YouTube, which, if the weather isn't really cooperating. Some that we enjoy one is called PE with Joe, and the other is Cosmic Kids Yoga. And I like to do this with them, my kids. It gets me more moving in the beginning of my day, and it's a really great start. Sometimes my kids don't want to join in, and that's fine, but I always invite them to. Now it's 9 a.m. Now can be a great time to invite your little ones to do some work with you. And if your kids are older and they have schoolwork, set up a workstation so you can sit next to each other if they do need some help. And for your little kids, your little helpers, give them some office supplies such as paper and coloring, and you may even be creative and give them an old phone or a keyboard so they can work with you. And this is time from the second point of organizing a routine about pairing things together. Here, I'm working, but having the kids with me, and I just need to be flexible, kind of with interrupted work time. At 10 a.m., we have snack and independent play in the kids' room. And I love putting out a veggie and fruit plate available for the kids all day. And at morning snack and afternoon snack time, I kind of add some crackers or cheese or granola bars to make that feel more like snack time. Before I set out food for the day, like just for the kids to kind of come and eat whenever they wanted to, just the requests for snacks were overwhelming. And this has really helped a lot. Even putting snacks in a muffin tin can make the variety seem more interesting. And after that, maybe have a change of scenery. This can still be playtime for your child, but maybe instead of working next to you, they go and have independent play in their room. Help them find like 3 activities that they can do in their room while they are playing. At this point, you could have electronic time while you are working nearby. And I have gotten this question, how should we feel about the use of screen time during this pandemic? Now, I know that a lot of kids are having more time to play games online or do their homework or watch movies, even connecting and speaking with friends and family by using a screen. And I want to share that Dr. Radetzky, a pediatrician and expert on children and media, says that parents need to stop thinking of screen time in a negative way. So kind of when we focus on time, it can make us feel guilty if our kids go over that recommended time limit. Rather, you can focus on three important points: your child, the content, and the context. So as a parent, you are the expert on your child and you know your child better than anyone. So choose programs that your children are interested in, like if they like music, choosing something that with a soundtrack that you can sing along to. In regard to your content, choose educational shows. Maybe sometimes, they love Frozen, but they could also watch something on PBS Kids or nature shows. And lastly, context. How we relate to children regarding the media plays a big factor. And Dr. Radetzky encourages parents to engage with their kids during screen time. Now, maybe you're using screen time as a distraction while you work, but you can ask questions about what they are learning or what they watch, or even have them watching a cooking show and then having a cooking activity later as a family. That could be fun too. 12 o'clock, having a, in the sample schedule, you can have lunch and outside time, weather permitting. You can eat lunch together and then kind of head outside. 1 p.m. is a great time for having naps, book time, quiet time. And if your kids are still napping, you can put them down at this time. And if not, you can create an area by gathering some pillows and blankets, a stack of books to make just like a little reading nook or rest time area. At 2 o'clock, Maybe your nap time is still going on for some of your younger children, but if older children are up, you can begin playtime. What are some activities that they can work on as you are working? Maybe coloring or Legos or Play-Doh. So this is kind of more like the 9 o'clock hour where you guys are working side by side. At 3 o'clock, you can have some more playtime and afternoon snack. Put out that veggie tray. It's really helpful. And then your children can go maybe into the room or have another change of scenery from working next to you. This just gets them moving through a progression and having a routine where they know what to expect. Now, 4 p.m., I really encourage parents to kind of be engaged. And we know how crazy these pre-dinner hours can be. So playing with your little ones now, it can really help things stay calm. Some activities that our family loves to do include, hide and seek or doing puzzles or reading together. Another fun activity that we've started 3 times a week is that we've started story time, where we call my children's grandfather, and he actually reads to them on FaceTime a few times a week. And this is really great because they can have that time with him. I have some time to start dinner. It's really a win-win all around. You could also be getting outside as the weather is getting nicer. It's really nice to be out and get that sun and vitamin D and fresh air. Even if you have some space like a backyard or a balcony, you could consider planting something. And it's really wonderful to give the responsibility of watering and caring for a plant to your children and having them watch things grow. You could even, online I've seen ideas of how to get seeds from the food that we are eating rather than having to buy plants. Depending on what works for your family, maybe 5 o'clock is a good dinner time, between 5 and 6. And sometimes it can be overwhelming thinking that we need to have dinner every single night because it seems like we've been planning so much throughout the day anyways. But recently I started doing a weekly dinner schedule, which has really helped me to think about what I'm going to prepare that night, as well as influences my one trip to the grocery store that I take every 2 weeks. So, just planning things out and being prepared about what you want to eat can also be very helpful in making this routine. Now, don't get me wrong, I always have some easy go-to dinners when I don't feel like cooking, having some pizza or, some deli meat for sandwiches, or even having breakfast for dinner. That's always a really big hit. I also think that having a little smoothie with frozen fruits available at any meal, anytime, can add great nutrition throughout the day. So at this point of the night, can be kind of wrapping up any activities for the day, last minute coloring, or, my kids, they love to wrestle, and thankfully that's not my activity. Thankfully, my husband, he's got muscles for days, and so it doubles as his cardio, wrestling with our boys, so that's really a win-win as well. And we start getting ready for bed and brushing teeth and having bath time and stories, and the kids, it's really great to have a routine because, they know what to expect and it gives them independence. They start to do those activities on their own and they know what's coming next. At 7 p.m. in our house, it's bedtime, and my kids are up around 7:20, so I really work hard to get them into bed by about 7:30 at the latest. And in just a little bit, I'm going to speak about the importance of sleep. Now, before you say, oh my goodness, your kids go to bed so early, I'm just going to say one thing. In a little bit, we're going to speak about the importance of sleep and how much sleep kids need at different ages and stages. And sleep is so important for these growing minds. At 8 p.m., my routine is still going. I'm trying to finish any work that I can, and maybe this works for you to do some work at night as well. Maybe this includes like 15 minutes of walking around the house and picking a few things up, or maybe you feel like leaving the dishes in the sink for the next day. Whatever works for you. But by 9 p.m., I would say take a break. You need to give yourself time to relax as well. Enjoy a show or do a hobby that you enjoy. And by 10 o'clock, it's your bedtime, and your rest is just as important as your kids. So going hand in hand with having a routine, let's talk about sleep schedules. And this is not only necessary for surviving quarantine, but it's also just as important for our children's mental health and their growth. So why is sleep important? Well, nothing makes me crankier than when I'm feeling hungry and tired. Maybe you feel the same way. And I can even identify with that term hangry, being more easily angered when I'm so hungry. And just like food is so important for our growing bodies and for our stomachs, sleep really is like food for our brains. And as our kids grow, they're continuously processing information. And when we sleep, our brains actually work to compartmentalize information from the day. And you can think about it kind of like a fairy coming and cleaning a room and placing all the books away, putting the papers in the right files. And that's what sleep does for our brain. And this is why when we don't get enough sleep, we're more cranky and things are harder to remember. And for our kids, they'll be less in control of their emotions, more irritable. I don't need to explain to you what a tired child is like. But what is healthy sleep in children? Well, healthy sleep is continuous, undisturbed night sleep. And that means that our children sleep through the night. Now, obviously, there are some elements that we're not in control of, having bad dreams or a leaked diaper, but the goal is to give them a healthy, balanced, and uninterrupted night of sleep so that they will be more in control of their emotions and be able to think more clearly the next day. And one way to help your child to have undisturbed sleep, according to sleep experts, is not to have any light in the room. So if your child is using a night light, try to make it a dim red light, which works best for kids. Studies have shown that the cells in our eyes that detect light can send messages to the brain. So even when you are sleeping, if you have like a blue or a white light in the room, that can interrupt the body's circadian clock, which means that you're awake in the daytime and sleeping when it's nighttime. And that can also have a negative effect in our mood. Also, having healthy sleep means falling asleep easily within about 10 to 15 minutes. And I want to say two important things about this. First, routine can really influence bedtime. And it's so helpful because for children, they know what to expect when the nighttime routine begins, and it gives them that control to do things on their own. They can put their pajamas on, they brush their teeth, and obviously things are going to happen that are outside of your control, like if your child is going through a sleep regression or if they're sick. But as often as you can, if you can really protect their sleep, that is a really great and wonderful thing. The second thing would be that I would warn against having too much screen time before bed. And in fact, as we were speaking about before, the light from our phone is that blue light. And the blue light does not allow the brain to produce the hormone melatonin, which is what helps your body sleep. And this kind of communicates to the brain, we're up, let's have fun, which is not the message that you want to send right before bedtime. So experts suggest staying away from a screen for at least a period of 2 hours for bedtime. And, there are certain apps such as Flux or Twilight where you can change the setting to prevent that blue light on your phone screen. And I'm talking to you adults. If you're using your device before bed, maybe that's helpful because that's also sending blue light to your brain and waking you up. So we just want to make sure that you have you as an adult have the best night's sleep as possible because you also need to be fully rested for the next day. So another good question is, how much sleep is needed? Well, when we have a good circadian rhythm, we should fall asleep when it's night and we should wake up when it's daytime. And people wonder how much sleep children really need to be fully rested. Well, this is a good guideline. So toddlers who are between 1 to 3, they should get about 11 to 14 hours in a 24-hour period. That includes their nighttime sleep as well as their daytime sleep. For preschoolers, ages 3 to 5, 10 to 13 hours is what you're looking for. For children who are 5 to 12 years old, those school-age children having 9 to 11 hours, as well as teenagers who are 13 to 18 could have about 8 to 10 hours in 24 hours. So to summarize this first part of the presentation, we've kind of looked at routine for daytime and for bedtime with our children and how that really provides them with structure, which actually gives them boundaries to express their own independence. Remember, kids really thrive in structure. Now, I really want to shift our focus a little bit more and look at us as parents. So more specifically, I want to look at our reactions in stressful situations. Have you had a few of those having entered into quarantine? Often they say that kids are kind of like our mirrors, that they reflect what we do and how we speak and especially how we react. So how can we be in control of our reactions when we feel like we are on 24/7? So recently I was listening to a panel of mothers speaking on parenting in quarantine, and one shared her story that her kids had one of these stuffed penguins from a TV show, and both of the kids wanted to play with this fluffy penguin. And they were just screaming and crying, and she comes between them, and she takes the penguin and she yells, This is what you're fighting over? And she proceeds to rip off the wings of the penguin in front of her kids. Of course, at this point, everyone is losing it. And then as she turns, she gets a glimpse of herself in the mirror, holding this penguin in one hand and the two wings in the other hand. And then she realizes, you know what? I'm going to take a break now. Like, I should have taken a break a little bit before this moment, but does that sound familiar? Kind of losing it in the moment? What really needs to happen is you need to give yourself permission to take a break. And what does that mean? So the first thing to stay in control of our reactions is to know your breaking points. One of my triggers is when my children have that really whiny tone in their voice. It's really, I have a lot of patience, that's for sure. But it really bothers me. And one thing I need to do at that moment is, if it's escalating, is to just create space. So I remind myself that I don't need to win every argument with my children, and that I will be able to communicate with my children when all of us have cooled down. And, I tell this for parents as well. If your child is kind of in that cycle where they can't calm down, it's really important to have a cool down time where they have a moment to take a breath, to be alone, to be able to get in control again before coming back. And it's so helpful for us as adults as well. What's essential to recognize basically within yourself is that you have a breaking point. And when you can tell your child, I am not ready to speak about this right now. I need to be alone for a few minutes so I can calm down. And this actually gives you the opportunity to walk away, take a deep breath, and, come back when you are refreshed. I'm telling you, 4 minutes can make all the difference in the world. Just give yourself a cool down time. The second point is to keep in mind that you are only in control of you. And this is a really important truth about human relationships that Barbara Colarasso, an educator on child behavior, she puts so clearly, and that we all need to be reminded of. Other people cannot make you angry. People may tease you, they may provoke you, or invite you to be angry, but in the end, you choose your response. And you alone are responsible for that choice and for accepting the consequences that come with it. Now, we need to take ownership of our own feelings and acknowledge that we are responsible for the way that we act on those feelings. Another one of my favorite podcast hosts, she said, you cannot be mean enough to help a mean person be nice. It doesn't work that way. And you cannot be angry enough to help an angry child get to calm. You can only truly teach calm from a place of calm, and you can only teach emotional control from a place of emotional control. Now, let me tell you, I'm going to be real, and you know this. We all lose it at times, and that is okay. But when that happens, we can actually use it for good. It can be a moment to express humility and also apologize for our behavior. Another important point when recognizing our reactions to situations is to actually find new ways to communicate during the chaos. So for example, if your child is throwing a tantrum and you want to react by throwing an adult tantrum, we need to remember that communication is one of the best ways to dissolve the tension. And this can be with our body language or with our words. The key is not to say that your child is being bad, but to address their behavior. So for example, if they're yelling, you can say, it's too loud for my ears. We need to go into our own rooms, and when our voices are more calm, then we can speak about this. Or another thing is not to engage on the same emotional level as your children, regardless of how tempting it is or how easy that would be. Sometimes, even though we have routine for bedtime, my kids, sometimes they don't want to get ready for bed, and they, can't find their pajamas or disagreeing about who brushes their teeth first, and everyone's emotions are running amok. And while it's tempting to respond to their screaming with my own yelling, I try to remind myself no one can make me mad without my permission. And funny enough, keeping a calm composure actually helps diffuse the situation. And I'm not going to lie, it takes a lot of discipline, but it's so worth it. And when I don't engage at that emotional level, I find that my children, they kind of take that on them and they stop crying so much quicker than when I respond in the same attitude that they are using. Now, I wanted to take a little sidetrack here at this point. As I was preparing this presentation and thinking about all the different kinds of parents that are going through quarantine and, how they're juggling so much already, I've always been thinking about not only the parents that are working during quarantine, but also the single parents that, are trying to pay their bills and make dinners and care for their kids and keep their sanity. And if you are a single parent, I have to tell you, you have a superhero cape. I want you to take one moment at a time, take the time to breathe. And for every parent right now, if you need help or support with any behavioral questions, you can always contact me at Hannah, Hannah, at lovingourlittles.com. There's also a Facebook group that I'm part of with my colleagues called the Early Years Community. And I really encourage you to look us up, find us, get added to the group. And in that group, you can ask any question, about raising children, child behavior, sleep, anything, and receive answers that you need for your child's behavior. And for all of you, every single person who is in the life of a child, we want to be there for you and to help you and support you during this pandemic. So I'm going to come back now after speaking about that. We've kind of are at the end of this first section of this presentation, and we looked at our day-to-day survival, noticing the importance of routine, the importance of good sleep, and how crucial it is as well to be in control of our own reactions. And I understand that, maybe we want to do so many more things than we actually are doing, but you have got to just have grace for yourself, be patient with yourself, be patient with your children, and take one moment at a time. So for the second point of this presentation, I want to speak about what your children may be going through and how understanding where they are can help us communicate and to reach them at an appropriate level. So recently I watched a news segment about how children in Canada are doing during COVID-19 on a wide scale and how it's taking a toll on our children emotionally and physically. And one thing that was emphasized was how the development of our children's social skills are really impacted and how that influences their mindset. So as I was digging a little deeper, I want to know and share what actually is happening with our kids. Social distancing is affecting kids. As human beings, we are very social beings. And more than that, as children, human interactions are very important. According to Dr. Caswell, infancy and adolescence mark the biggest growth spurts where our minds are the most malleable and primed for learning. And these periods mark many of the skills developed, the beliefs that we have, the beliefs that are formed, and the way that we perceive ourselves and how we interact with the world during this stage. And that becomes a major role in defining who we become as adults. And one big part of that learning is human interaction. Now, keep in mind that this type of quarantine affects all kids differently, and this is especially true depending on their different ages. For example, Dr. Wendy Walsh, she actually proposed that children that are 5 to 6 years and younger could really be thriving in this type of environment and to develop very healthy attachment styles to their parents. However, it's more the older children who may be having a harder time with social distancing. So first, older children are not experiencing the same type of independence that they normally would. At the age of adolescence, this is the time when friendships really take on a deeper level. Things become based on shared interests, and they begin forming their own independent voices. Essentially, they're learning social skills, but they're also building deeper roots in their friendships. And second, children are not experiencing the same interactions that they normally would. So despite the way younger people are constantly in contact with one another through FaceTime or House Party or other apps, it really doesn't supplement for the quality of in-person connections. So these types of subtle connections are made through human interactions, like learning to share with one another, or if someone's alone, reading their body language, taking turns in resolving conflicts. These are all important and primarily in-person learning experiences. And this is really evident when you think about a child's participation in clubs at school and how they have a chance to have that interaction with new people or authority figures and how they witness group dynamics. All of these become very important life lessons that right now they could be missing out on. So how can we help counter some of these difficulties? Well, Dr. Raviv recommends a three-pronged approach for helping kids in this stressful time. The first thing is to ensure that a child's physical needs, their food, their shelter, their health, all of that is taken care of. And this could be making sure that children are eating a healthy diet as well as getting exercise every day. Being outside and getting sunlight and getting your heart rate up, that's really important, and it contributes to the mental and physical well-being of your child. The second thing is to focus on your child's social needs. So one way to do this is to be intentional about interacting together. For example, although my kids are quite young, our whole family generally plays a game of Uno, a few times a week. Of course, you want to pick a game that's age appropriate for the kids in your house, but playing with one another helps the children interact with us as adults, and they're able to witness how we react in new situations. So if we're losing or if we're winning. And I've actually seen firsthand on how my son has picked up expressions from my husband that really only come out when his more competitive side shows. And this is a good thing because we're exposing our kids to different situations. So the second thing is to encourage interactions with friends, but beware of their apps. Since right now the internet is the only way that our kids are interacting with one another, don't be too hard on the amount of texting or calling that they're doing. They really are seeking the human contact. But that said, I would encourage you to be familiar with the apps that your children are using and the risks that are involved. During this time of loneliness, your children are exploring the internet and there are numerous dangers out there. Alicia Kozak is an internet safety expert and a child abduction survivor, and she does a lot of work to educate parents about being involved in their child's online activity. And she strongly encourages parents to be involved and to do these three important things. First of all, speak to your children about online dangers. And maybe you have not spoken to them about it before, or maybe you have, but bring it up again. The second thing is to monitor and supervise your children on their devices. You should know their passwords and you should be able to log in anytime to see what they have been doing. And although this may feel like an invasion of privacy, it's not about getting them in trouble, but really it's about keeping them safe. And the last and the most important thing is to have an open line of communication with your children. Let them know that they can come to you for anything without having fear of you being mad or disappointed. Children are so afraid of getting in trouble or upsetting their parents, and they're scared that they would lose their device or the opportunity to play games or anything. Right now, this is their only connection to the outside world. And so instead of getting frustrated or upset, just sit down calmly and resolve that together you and your child will solve the problem and that you are always on their team. The third way to help our children in quarantine is to empower your child to freely express their emotions and to help by providing coping mechanisms. So for slightly older kids, this may be giving them time to be alone. We don't realize that in a given normal day, kids often have a lot of downtime where they can decompress, walking to the school bus, maybe walking home. However, in quarantine, we're together all the time, every day. So definitely give kids the time to be alone, and this may very well be an expression of their own independence. And for younger kids, one way children may act out is maybe through temper tantrums. And it's possible that you've seen a rise in this pandemic-style temper tantrum in these recent months with your younger children. However, I want to tell you, keep in mind that temper tantrums are not something to stifle, but they are developmentally appropriate. Your child is not the only one losing it and having temper tantrums. So we're going to look at our child's brain at this point. A child's brain has two important parts that are involved in the way that they respond to a situation. In this picture, you can see the logical part, which is the prefrontal cortex, and that tends to think before acting. And honestly, it only starts to mature about the age of 4, and it fully develops at 25. And on the bottom part, you can see the emotional part, the amygdala, and that is more reactionary, and it has that fight or flight mentality. And this part of our brain is actually fully developed at birth. So when our children lose it, perhaps you just wiped their nose or you poured water on their head while they were in the bath, the amygdala takes over in full defense mode. At this point, what our children need from us is not instruction during these temper tantrum moments, but they need the comfort and they need permission to express how they are feeling. Now, there's a very fine line here. They're not allowed to hurt themselves, they're not allowed to hurt others, and they're not allowed to break things. So you may have to hold them until they can calm down, and you speak to them, in a very calm, soothing way from an emotional control, so you can teach emotional control to them. But once they have calmed down, we can validate them. Like, you did not like when I poured the water on your head. Can we think of a better way to do it next time? And this is how you strengthen the connection between the logical part and the emotional part in their brain. What could have been done differently next time? We could actually use these moments as teachable moments rather than escalating moments. And we can teach appropriate and inappropriate responses. It's okay to be mad, but it is not okay to hit. Next time, if you do not like it, please say stop. The most important thing here is that we remember that tantrums, they're normal, and we can allow our children to express themselves, and we can come alongside them to comfort and support them. And our job really is to teach them how to navigate their own feelings. So hopefully this clarifies a bit of what children are currently going through and how to better reach them where they are and to understand their brain development and how to understand how they may be feeling in quarantine. So of course, there's no supplement for being out with friends. However, this is a unique time where we're able to grow in other areas, such as being with our family, and we really want to make sure to take advantage of that. I mean, when are we all going to be at home for this kind of amount of time? So I hope that you can enjoy these kids as well, like at this time. Finally, in our last section, I want to provide some tools in your pocket, and these tools are generally helpful when situations are escalating and we're trying to resolve conflicts by inviting cooperation from our children. However, I just want to reiterate, be patient with yourself. You may or you may not use these tools, and that is okay, but they're in your pocket in case you need them. So the first tool is telling your children what they can and what they cannot do. So when we give a command, they're usually prohibitions. Don't do that. Don't take that. You're not allowed to eat that. However, while we have informed them what they shouldn't do, we have not yet told them what they can do. And when we can be a little more creative about telling them what they can do, it invites teamwork and it gives them a clear picture of what your expectations are. One time I was baking muffins with my 3 kids, and this situation could have become quite stressful. Immediately, they began shoving their hands in the bowl to touch the flour while they were, simultaneously bumping into each other as they were standing there. And my first instinct thought was to say, stop doing that. However, I tried to focus on telling them instead what they could do instead of telling them what they could not do. So for example, I told my oldest son, can you begin to measure the flour? And then with my middle son, I said, show me how you stir very carefully. Can you keep all the ingredients in the bowl? And that sounds very simple and maybe even an obvious thing, right? But let me tell you, when everyone was given clear instructions, it was incredible seeing how easy it was to invite them to cooperate. Instead of hearing what they could not do, I actually was empowering them by telling them positive and clear goals on what they could do. So I want you to just take a moment and think about the different do not sentences and in your day and consider how to turn them into positive commands. So instead of saying, do not splash in the mud puddle, you could say, let's keep our feet dry on the sidewalk. Or instead of don't run so far ahead, you could say, show me how your feet walk close to me. Instead of saying, don't throw your toys, you could say, we can either play with the toys on the floor or at the table. Instead of saying, don't come out of your room, it's bedtime, you could say, you can read books or you can play quietly in your bed as you let your body rest and fall asleep. But in order for this to be effective, do not be afraid to set boundaries. This helps your child feel safe and loved, and we can set these boundaries and rules without making a child feel bad about who they are. The second tool in our pocket is to validate our children when they're acting out, when they're frustrated, when there's a conflict, and then we give them hope. Validating says, I really understand how you are feeling. I feel that way too. For example, if my oldest son does not want to share with my middle son, that middle son, he typically starts acting out and, begins to cry. And while it's tempting to say, oh, come on, there are so many other toys that you could choose from, I find it more effective to sit down and validate him. I say, oh, you really wanted that toy, right? I also would really want to play with that toy. It's so cool. Not only does this help our children feel understood, but it also provides a way forward, giving them hope. Maybe we can't play with that toy right now, but what if we worked on this puzzle together? Or to give him, hope, he can also ask his older brother with the toy, when you're done, can I have a turn? And when you validate, what you're saying is, I really understand how you're feeling and I am here for you. Let's talk about it. Can I hug you? I know that situation is hard and it's okay to be frustrated. So some ways that you could validate in your day-to-day life, you could say, I know you wanted an ice cream. I love eating ice cream. It's so good. Today we've had our ice cream and tomorrow can be another ice cream day. Or, I know that you love cuddling. I love cuddling with you too. Right now it's bedtime, or right now I need to go and do this, but later let's make some time for cuddling. Or another way you could say that is, I cannot believe I ran out of cereal. That would make me so frustrated too. I'm sorry I don't have the cereal that you want today. Tomorrow I'm going to, or when I go to the store, I'm going to make sure to pick some up for you. Another tool that we want to use when speaking with our children is to arouse empathy and to help them connect and feel for others and do something to make it better. This is often in response to addressing conflict, and this would be inviting your child to see how their actions affected another person. So in the same situation that I spoke about before with my children not sharing a toy, I would take the opportunity to ask my older son who's not sharing to look at his brother and to explain to me what he sees. And often you can arouse empathy in their eyes by directing their focus to how the other person is feeling. And this is a great exercise to work on because it's so easy to be self-absorbed, but it's important to look at how other people are feeling and to see what can we do in a situation like that. So in the same situation that I just mentioned earlier, where my one son was not sharing his toy with the other, I would also take the opportunity to ask the older son who's not sharing to look at his brother and to explain to me what he sees. And often you can arouse empathy in their eyes by just directing their focus to how the other person is feeling. He really thinks that that toy is so cool. He's really sad because he's not able to play with it now. It's okay that you have it, but when you have a turn, when you're done, can you please let him have a turn? So instead of saying, you need to share more or you need to say sorry now, you could say, look at their face. They're crying because they felt left out. Or that really hurts, doesn't it, when we are left out? And to call them on action and on what they can do to make it better. Of course, there's a fine line between arousing empathy as well as giving a guilt trip. So when you arouse empathy, you state facts. For example, if your kids got into a fight, you could say, look, her arm is red where you pinched her, or he's crying because you scared him. Arousing empathy is stating the facts and then giving your children the opportunity to make it better. So instead of forcing them to say sorry, you could suggest that they ask, what can I do to make it better? Finally, we want to catch our children doing good. And that really focuses on the positive actions that your children are doing. This is intentionally commenting and finding opportunities to celebrate their little victories along the way, that you are delighting with them in the process rather than just waiting for the finished product or the behavior to be perfect. And this message that you're sending to your child is that what they bring to the family is special and unique, and that it's something that you really appreciate. So for example, you could say, when you kiss me in the morning, it starts my day off so well. I love having those kisses. Or, hey, you know what? You didn't think you could get your 2 socks on, but look at that. You already got 1 on. Or even if you say, you know what? Often it takes a long time that you are crying because you're upset, but look at that, you didn't cry as much, that you were able to control your emotions, and that's a really great thing. So I want to share with you that my son, he used to be a very, very picky eater, and I mean, he is still kind of. He wouldn't want to sit at the table unless he was eating only the food that he wanted to, and I said, you don't have to eat the food that we're eating, but I love it when you sit here with us. It makes me so happy to see your face and to have a chance to speak with you, to hear about your day. And you know what? He started spending more time at the table even when he wasn't eating. And when he does eat, I make sure that, he has a selection of fruits and vegetables that he does enjoy. And when I see him enjoying some fruit, I say, it's so wonderful to watch you enjoy that piece of fruit. And now that he's starting to sit at the table and was spending more time, I said that we were going to include this 1 bite try. And I said, you don't have to like it, but you have to give it 1 bite. And I've been persistent, and he's responded well to hearing his name and success. So you can imagine my surprise when he asked me, Mom, can I have a small piece of chicken? I may not like it, but I'm going to try it. Pointing out the things that our children are doing, those small victories, saying their name in positive ways can make them want to hear that more. If we point out right, they want to do more right and more positive things. So with your children, point out what they are doing right, and this will be a source of growth and encouragement for them. Now, we have gone over a lot today. We've talked about the importance of schedules and routine, of protecting ourselves from outbursts, as well as what our children are going through and what ways we could be an encouragement to them through these 4 important tools that invite cooperation. Remember, we are all going through a pandemic, which greatly influences many aspects of every day. So reach out for help or support and take care of yourself so that you really can help your children as well. We really are all in this together. So I would love to invite you to check out my Facebook page, Loving Our Littles, for any future updates and information. And if you found this information helpful and you'd like to share your experience with others, please consider writing a review on my Facebook page. I hope that you have a fun rest of your quarantine, however long that is, and have a great day.